Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We shall begin with our evening, and first with the Lebanese national anthem. Your Excellency, Dr. Firas Abiad, our honored guests, we are delighted that you joined us today for the launch of the book of the founding director of the Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism Program, Dr. Talia Arawi, under the title, Towards a Post-Flexnerian Revolution, Graduating the Virtuous Physician, with the kind support of the Ministry of Public Health and the International Association of Bioethics and the Lebanese National Consultative Committee for Ethics, as well as the AUB Press. On this occasion, we are honored to have with us a number of distinguished guest speakers who have had notable contributions to the teaching and practice of ethics and humanism in medicine, locally and internationally. Accordingly, we have invited them to share with us their thoughts and reflections on the book and its main message, that the medical profession is intrinsically a moral venture, and consequently, the broader medical community is urged to recognize and remedy the flaws in the moral education of its medical school graduates. Without taking much time, we shall begin with a few opening words by Dr. Ramzi Sabro, the Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Medical Education and Director of the Program of Research and Innovation in Medical Education at AUB-FM, who has been a driving force in enhancing the medical curriculum at AUB-FM and a crucial partner to the program over the years. So, welcome, Dr. Sabro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arawi, for inviting me to partake in this launching of this book. And it's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the book entitled Towards a Post-Flexnerian Revolution, Graduating the Virtuous Physician, by my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Talia Arawi. I'm sure others are going to speak in depth about the book, but very briefly, I will say that this book, can I remove this? I'm too high. That the book addresses a very fundamental question, as the ad at the end of the book says, which is, what can medical schools do to ensure that their graduates will, as the author herself likes to put it, do the right thing even when no one is looking? A phrase that, by the way, recurs I counted around 15 times in the book. And you cannot leave the book without this sticking in your head. Do the right thing even when no one is looking. So what does that mean, really? If you do that, if you do the right thing when nobody is looking, it means simply that you are a genuinely good person, to put it simply. Somebody who behaves ethically, not only to comply with rules and regulations or to avoid penalties, not to show off or gain favor or be seen in a good light by others, but because your virtuous character automatically dictates your good behavior. Hence, Dr. Arawi's contention that medical education should aim to build character and develop a virtuous person. The path towards that, in her opinion, is obviously structuring a formal curriculum in bioethics and professionalism, but more importantly perhaps, it requires us to be aware and to guard against the negative impact of what has been termed the informal or the hidden curriculum in medical education, which can have a negative impact on the development of students. And therefore, we need to develop an environment and an institutional culture that really fosters the habits of virtue in students. Now, that is precisely what Dr. Arawi has been trying to accomplish at AUB Medical Center and Faculty of Medicine since she started her journey with us back in 2007. Initially with the limited task of restructuring one course, which is the medical ethics course in year 3. This limited role gradually grew and expanded, and eventually it blossomed into a diversity of activities through the Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism program, which is her brainchild. So the book we launched today is not merely a set of hypothetical musings on an interesting and relevant topic. Rather, those who are familiar with Dr. Arawi's work will recognize that many of the ideas expounded in the book have actually been implemented through the varied activities of the program, which are sponsored and initiated by the program. Thus, in addition to the formal courses that she has introduced that run through the 4 years of medical education, these initiatives have included, I'm going to list some of them, please bear with me. First, numerous lectures, seminars, workshops, and conferences on matters relating to bioethics and professionalism. The establishment of a bedside clinical ethics consultation program. The establishment of a Humanism Award and a Moral Courage Award to recognize students, residents, and faculty as role models. The establishment of a Humanism Fund to help needy patients, and Khilkhal, an initiative which aims to support this fund through volunteer activities. Then there is something called the Pop Talk event, which is one where faculty mentors and role models share their experiences of their life journey with students and guide them towards a career path. Brownies stands for Bioethics Rounds on the Wards. BEAM stands for Bioethics Education at the Movies. The Bioethics Multimedia Festival showcases the creative multimedia projects of medical students that they do for their course. Frost, from the other side of the stethoscope, Frost, is an open forum to discuss issues related to patient care and focuses on the non-medical and non-scientific aspects of their experience, their stories. Then there is Forum Theater. Forum Theater is an interactive theater activity which involves actors portraying actual real-life clinical ethics situations that were encountered by the faculty and asks the audience, which is students and residents, to try to come up with a solution. I'm going to continue. Ethics Matters is an online weekly posting that highlights clinical ethics, research ethics, patient-centered care. Humanism Matters highlights virtues, values, and exemplary actions using famous and inspiring quotations. And last but not least, in 2021, she launched LEAP. LEAP is the lens of a patient, from the lens of a patient, where this time healthcare workers themselves who became patients talk about their experience from their perspective as patients. There is more, but I will stop here. But I think you agree with me what a rich environment this has provided for our students and our community as a whole, all right? If you read the book, you will get the theoretical framework for Dr. Arawi's views about educating physicians. But if you probe the work of the Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism program, it will reveal how to apply those ideas and would allow you to better understand where Dr. Arawi is coming from and where she wants to take us. So, Talia, congratulations on all these accomplishments, of which the book is but the latest. And we look forward to your continued contributions to the education of our students and to consolidating the nourishing environment for their moral development, so that they will indeed do the right thing even when nobody is looking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sabra, for your kind words and your continuous collaboration and support. Now I would like to call upon His Excellency Dr. Firas Abyad for his keynote address. As Minister of Health since September 2021, Dr. Abyad needs no introduction, but as he has been on the forefront of health advocacy and action in Lebanon over the past couple of years, particularly since the onset of the pandemic, and as Minister of Health, he has been making relentless efforts to fight for the health sector in Lebanon amidst this unprecedented crisis and the mounting challenges, and he's also been continued support and collaborator with the program. Thank you, Dr. Abyad.
Thank you, and thank you, Talia, for the invitation. Today, dear colleagues and friends, I stand in front of you not as the Minister of Health, but as a physician, as your friend, as your colleague who had a big burden on my shoulders trying to address the current crisis that we are all witnessing. And what I would like to do is I would like to share with you some of my observations that pertain to the subject that we are gathered here to address today. When I joined Rafiq Hariri University Hospital back in 2015, it was a very troubled institution. It was passing through its own crisis. And at that time, there were a lot of challenges facing the new administration as I came. One of the biggest issues that worried me at the time is trying to lead a change in that institution. Who will do it with me? Because it's very clear for anybody who has led a change process that without the right people, you cannot really achieve much. A lot of people talk about resources, the availability of money, or having the right strategy to be able to implement the change. But I think that people who have passed through change process tell you that the key part in any change is people. And I was really worried at that time that taking over that troubled institution, there wouldn't be the right people to help me on that journey. I was wrong, luckily, and I was able to find a lot of people who were very good and had, for some reason, unknown to me, had decided to stay in that institution. And along the years, we were able to turn that institution into the Rafiq Hariri that you all know that was fighting COVID in 2020 and so on. And during that journey, one of the things that comes back to my mind is something that I learned in business school. And that's when they asked Peter Drucker, one of the gurus of management, about the role of business strategy. At Harvard Business School, strategy is something extremely important, and business strategy. And the question was, how does it relate to culture? And his answer was that culture eats business strategy for breakfast every morning. It's always the culture that, in my opinion, makes the big difference. Move forward a few years, and I find myself at the Ministry of Health, dealing with much bigger problems and dealing with a culture that we all know, dealing with politicians, dealing with merchants, most of the time quite greedy, dealing with hospitals who put profit in front of the public good or the health of patients, and all of the other issues that we know at the moment. Also looking at sometimes greedy physicians who want to prioritize their personal gain over supporting the patients as their Hippocratic oath mandates them to do. And I find myself going back to the original question that we always raised during our meetings in our curriculum sessions, and that is that medical school is more than just teaching people biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, medications, and the rest, which is what I went through when I was in medical school. This new addition to the curriculum that initially we thought is interesting to teach people in their learning communities about conflict management, about emotional intelligence, the bioethics courses that and the environment that I think Thalia and our rest of our colleagues enacted in our curriculum, to me now looks the essence of what education is about, let alone medical education. But specifically in our profession, without this humanistic approach, without this ethical approach, I cannot see how we have a better future, whether in our profession or in our country. And just to, and I would like to tell you some of the things that I have come to conclude concerning how to raise the ethical human being. Obviously, talking about educating the ethical human being entails an assumption, and that is that you can actually change human beings, that actually human beings can be morphed into having an ethical behavior. Because there are some theories that tell you that people have more or less sort of a fixed culture, and there are good people to start with and they will remain good, and there are bad people to start with and they will remain bad. And I'm not sure whether this is right or wrong, but I think that the attempt to be able to induce this culture of being good is something that is worth doing. So how do you achieve that? How do you get that? I think that there are several things that you need to do. The first and most important of the two things in my mind are creating the right environment. And I think that the courses and the environment that was created in our medical school and hopefully is created elsewhere in our country is extremely important to not only discuss further and reward ethical behavior. This is extremely important for us for everyone to make sure that we enforce whatever goodness is in them by making sure that there is the right environment to foster this behavior and to punish any contradicting behavior, so to speak. I think this is extremely important. But I think there is another thing that is even as important, if not more, and that is to find the right role models, where those role models are living examples of the culture, of the behavior that we want our students to be or to behave like. I think that this is something that is extremely important because it is our responsibility. It is our responsibility as senior physicians, as teachers, in my opinion, is to follow this role model behavior that we want our juniors to follow. And if we cannot give them this good example, then I think that we cannot really raise serious questions to them about their behavior in the future. And in my opinion, that at the end, we will be paying the price for not creating this ethical society that as we grow older and we need the society to support us, that society will be there when we need it. Thalia, I want to thank you really for all what you have done. I think a lot of the times, and for many students sometimes, they think that these courses are an opportunity to put more time into studying biochemistry, anatomy, and the rest. I sometimes believe that probably at their young age, they might not understand the gravity of this issue and how important it is. But let us hope that as we pass through this current crisis, and as we try as Lebanese to find our way out of this crisis, that we all understand more the importance of the message that we are getting here and strive to build a better and more virtuous society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abiad, for your wisdom and tireless work as well. Next, we shall hear, watch basically, the address of 3 distinguished colleagues via pre-recorded video, which we opted for over Zoom just to avoid any technical issues. So first we will start with Dr. Vardy Travitsky, who is a full-time professor at the bioethics program in the School of Public Health at the University of Montreal and part-time senior lecturer on global health and social medicine at Harvard Medical School. She's also the president of the International Association of Bioethics and has published over 170 articles and commentaries on bioethical issues. She has been a recurrent collaborator and guest with our program. Let's hear what Dr. Ravitsky has to say.
Hello, I am honored to be a part of this event and excited to congratulate Dr. Arawi on the publication of her book and on the courage to tackle the important topic of the moral education of clinicians and how to, in other words, graduate the virtuous physician. We all know that bioethics or ethics courses have been added to the curriculum of many medical schools around the world. However, the approach Dr. Arawi takes in this book is much broader. She's asking fundamental questions about the training of future physicians and beyond that about how to support their moral growth when they are practicing medicine. She reminds us of the importance of trust and virtue in medicine and asks some hard questions about the goals of medicine and how to make moral decisions in tough situations. She's also reminding us that being a moral physician means doing the right thing, making the ethical choice, not just because we're concerned about the legal repercussions of our acts, not just because we're accountable to our patients and superiors, but mostly because we are accountable to ourselves. As she frames it, we should have character traits that ensure we will do the right thing when no one is looking. Fortunately, the book does not remain at the level of philosophical analysis, although it does a very insightful job at the theoretical level. Dr. Arawi is offering some practical guidance regarding curricular reforms, including highlighting the importance of the hidden curriculum. She discusses what needs to be done in order to provide an organizational and cultural environment that allows and encourages moral growth. She offers suggestions regarding the use of mentorship and role models throughout medical education, but also the idea of veteran physicians accompanying physicians throughout their career. The combination of all these suggestions makes a substantial contribution to our thinking about medical education and medical training and what it means to be a good ethical physician. This book is obviously a fascinating read for medical students and any practicing physician, but I think it is also an important read for us bioethicists. In its combination of philosophical insight, real-life observations, and practical suggestions, sprinkled with examples and narratives, it really triggers us to think broadly about the intersection of education and ethics in medicine. It calls on us as a society to think about how we should ensure the delivery of the best care we can. So once again, congratulations, Dr. Arawi, on this achievement, and I hope your contribution to our thinking about this topic will have the impact that it deserves.
So we thank Dr. Ravitsky for her critical comments and her support. Next, we are honored to hear as well from Dr. Arthur Kaplan, who's currently the Drs. William and Virginia Connolly Mitty Professor and the founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU, Grossman School of Medicine in New York. Dr. Kaplan is a well-recognized expert, author, and advisor on ethics, both nationally and internationally, and whom we've had the pleasure of working with on a number of occasions over the past 10 years.
I'm Art Kaplan. I'm at the NYU Division of Medical Ethics in the Department of Population Health. And I wanted to say a few words about the launch of Talia's book. As I think some of you know, Talia is the first bioethicist in one of the Arab countries. She has faced many, many challenges and obstacles in trying to make medical ethics a part of professionalism for doctors, particularly being a woman at her AUB medical school, where she's surrounded by MDs, not always totally willing to listen to a woman's point of view, and a culture that very much believes strongly in what in philosophy we call logical positivism, that medicine is just about facts, medicine is just about data, medicine is just pure science, and ethics is somehow not that important or just an add-on. She knows that isn't true, the book reflects that, and she has managed to get her voice heard through constant argument. She's quite the politician, and she can be very persuasive when she wants to be about important matters like driving ethics into the center of the curriculum. She's helped disseminate that point of view, ethics and humanism, in the region. Talked to many, many people at different medical schools and hospitals, some of her students, some where she's visited to do continuing education. They're all deeply impressed by her work. I know that she has been a pioneer in bedside clinical ethics, doing a service in her own country of Lebanon, and that the feedback from healthcare workers, patients, families has been enormously positive, and that those kinds of consults are going to move regionally. We have a lot of them here in the US, and I think she will do them in a very culturally sensitive, attentive to the specifics of what different groups and different nations need in the Arab world. So she has been just a major leader regionally and internationally. I'm very pleased to give her book my endorsement. I'm very pleased to give her work my endorsement. She's been a partner and friend to the NYU medical ethics program for many, many years. Couldn't be happier to provide this word of encouragement and, if you will, strong endorsement. Get the book, read the book, pay attention to the effort that she's trying to make. There's no one I can think of who's been more important in her part of the world than Talia has been.
Thank you. We thank Dr. Kaplan for his kind words and strong encouragement. Next, we are pleased to hear from Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta. Dr. Abu Sitta is a multi-award-winning plastic and reconstructive surgeon, renowned for his contributions to providing care in conflict zones. He's the co-founder and director of the Conflict Medicine Program at the Global Health Institute at AUB, and is currently also a senior clinical lecturer at Queen Mary University of London. He has worked closely with and as part of our program over the years and continues to support and collaborate with us.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank Talia and the Salim Al-Hus program for inviting me to speak in this auspicious occasion of the book launch. And the book really comes as the culmination of a unique experience that Talia led at the American University in Beirut, which is really to weave bioethics education and professionalism education and to challenge medical students from the very beginning of their first year at medical school till the time they graduate. And therefore, rather than have a single event course, be there continuously challenging the students while they encounter their first patient, they encounter their first clinic appointment, they are in the operating room for the first time, they are in the intensive care unit for the first time. And by doing that, really embed the bioethics education, humanitarianism and professionalism training into the pathway of medical education. And the reason that is extremely important is that the medical students of the day and health professionals of tomorrow are really faced with challenges that are unprecedented. Othering, the process of the politicization and the social manufacturing of the other, and the way that reflects on medical treatment, is now such a powerful political and social tool for discriminating against people based on gender, ethnicity, color, religion, lifestyle choice, that as health professionals, we must be extremely cognizant of that process from its very beginning. Denying people health care, or at least stratifying access to health care based on either the process of othering or based on economic and social factors is so widespread, particularly with the increasing commodification of healthcare and the increasing corporatization of hospital and hospitalization. And so for medical students to come out of their medical education really with a strong sense of right and wrong, a strong sense of professional ethics and duty, is critical and would never have been successfully done in a traditional didactic program. And I think what the book does is it takes these students and the reader behind the theoretical and practical underpinnings of such an experience. In addition, the book really allows Talia and her experience at the AUB to be shared and replicated, hopefully, across the globe. And this experience was not just during the economic collapse in Lebanon, where patients and health professionals became extremely challenged by the hyperinflation and the economic collapse, but during wars, conflicts, with injured patients, with needy patients, with refugee children, all of this, which makes the AUB such a unique place, meant that this experience is transferable, is relevant for whomever chooses to integrate the education of bioethics, humanitarianism and professionalism into the medical education pathway of their students. Congratulations to Talia on such an outstanding book, and I hope that everyone gets the same benefit from it as I have when they read it.
We thank Dr. Abu Sitta for his insight and continued support. Now we would like to invite Mr. Bashar Hassan for a few words. Mr. Hassan is a Med4 student who has worked with SHBPP and Dr. Arawi on a number of ethics projects and initiatives over the past 3 years, of which included the establishment of the student volunteer initiative Khilkhal. Bashar.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. During a clinical skills session in my second year of medical school, we had to interview a patient who was recently diagnosed with an endocrine illness at AUBMC, but who was misdiagnosed for 16 years before coming into our medical center. His diagnosis led to multiple complications, including vertebral fractures, and his misdiagnosis could have been prevented with a simple calcium level. After knowing that the patient was illiterate and of a very poor financial background, I wondered whom I should reach out to for help. It was then that I first contacted Dr. Arawi to help me found a student-led program that enrolls volunteers in fundraising activities to support patients in need of healthcare. This was how Khilkhal was born. Through Khilkhal, we managed to assist the patient in covering his medications for more than a year, and we enrolled him in an Arabic teaching course to help him read and write. We named the initiative Khilkhal as those who wear the Khilkhal are daring people. The Khilkhal also leaves a sound and an imprint, and this is what we do in Khilkhal. We dare, we inspire, and we leave an imprint. And this is, today, 3 years later, Khilkhal became one of the biggest volunteering programs at AUB, AUBMC, and Lebanon, with over 400 volunteers from AUB, Balamand, USG, NDU, City College of New York, and others. Our volunteers are pre-medical, medical, undergraduate, graduate students, and MDs coming from Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, and the USA. As the founding director of the Salim Al-Hus Bioethics and Professionalism Program at AUBMC, who adopted Khilkhal, Dr. Arawi helped us carry out activities to enhance fundraising, to enhance humanism and compassion towards patients and our community as a whole. She supported us in implementing fundraising activities, books, clothes drives, and other activities where volunteers were involved in cooking, preparing food boxes, distributing holiday meals to needy families, cleaning and reconstruction campaigns after Beirut blast to rebuild what was left of our beloved country. Dr. Arawi has guided us, among many other medical students, to be the virtuous physicians of the future. I wouldn't imagine Towards a Post-Flexnerian Revolution, a book that calls for integrating medical ethics in medical education and graduating virtuous physicians would be written by any other than her. Dr. Arawi, congratulations on your book. I have been honored to meet you and to work with you and to have been mentored by you.
Thank you, Bashar. And now, without further ado, I would like to call upon Dr. Arawi for her talk. Thank you.
So, colleagues, friends, students, everyone, actually, I feel overwhelmed. I don't take compliments very well. Actually, I feel يا ريت تنشق الأرض تبلعني, but there's nothing I can do about that. Let me begin by actually thanking my colleague and boss, مع إنه بشوفه a friend much more than a boss, Dr. Ramzi Sabra. The reason why I asked Dr. Sabra actually to come and open the session is not because of his academic appointment or as Associate Dean for Undergraduate Medical Education. The reason why I asked Dr. Sabra goes back to an incident that happened in 2007 when I was sitting at the International College one late afternoon wondering what is it that I really want to do, to stay or to leave, and my heart was somewhere else, was not purely in simple teaching. I wanted to do something in medicine. And all of a sudden, I got a call from Dr. Sabra. قال لي, "Hey, Talia, are you interested in teaching ethics at AUB?" Of course, I said yes. I submitted my resignation, met Dr. Sabra, whom I have to say has always humbled me. He put up with me a lot, لأنه أنا مشاغبة actually, and I come up with crazy ideas sometimes. And he's been a supporter, a colleague, and a friend ever since. So Ramzi, thank you very much, really. Again, colleagues, students, friends, and family, I thank you for honoring and for your honoring and humbling presence today. شفتوا قد ايه thank yous ما بحبون. Presence today amidst times marked by uncertainties, to say the least. Special appreciation goes to the Ministry of Health, the International Association of Bioethics, and the Comité Consultatif National Libanais d'Éthique for supporting this event. Thank you again to my colleagues, Dr. Ramzi Sabra, Firas Abyad, Arthur Kaplan, Barty Dravitsky, Ghassan Abu Sitta, and to my student, colleague, and I proudly say mentee, Bashar Hassan. Thank you to the AUB Press in general, Yasmin Hajjar in particular, and Marie-Claire Leader in particular also for making this day possible, and of course, my very dear colleagues, the core of the growing SHBP family, Diana Miati and Tala Khansa. Thank you very much. Special gratitudes, actually, goes to my mom and dad, okay, to whom I owe everything in life, to my very dear sisters, Mimosa and Wadad, who happen to be here, to Dr. Waddah Nasser, my professor and mentor, and last but not least, to Tante Mona Saba Rahal. I don't know if she's here. She was supposed to come. Tante Mona Saba Rahal is mom's best friend, whom I always called the Simone Beauvoir of our times. Providence had it that Mama, who taught me by words and example the importance of virtues and integrity, and to whom this book is dedicated, is joining us from another world today, a much better one. To Mama, the light of my being, who raised me on virtues, morals, and courage, I'm sorry. Thank you for being who you are and for making me what I am. For raising me to believe that the virtues of old times can still thrive amidst modern-day chaos. It is customary in book launching events to have the author read a few passages from the book, but I will not do that. Instead, I want to share a short narrative of personal trajectory at AUB, which in many ways led to this book. To many, AUB is a university from which they receive their degrees. To others, the place where they work. To me, it is a very different story. AUB is a place I joined when I was 17 years of age. I got my bachelor's in sociology, worked as an administrative assistant at the PSPA department, while fulfilling the prerequisites for a master's in philosophy. I then became a student assistant at the philosophy department, a graduate assistant, then a research assistant. AUB is the place where I learned to do research, write papers, and later articles and books. In Nicely Hall, I took almost all my courses. And West Hall was the drama club, the Red Cross, Reading for the Blind, to mention but a few. The moving finger writes, and having written moves on, says Al-Khayyam. AUB is the place where I shifted from pre-med to philosophy through a twist of fate. Ha'alik, Dr. Nasser. One late morning in front of Nicely 212, when I was passing by with my cell biology book and overheard the philosophy class discussing Hegel. Eventually, I ended up doing 2 PhDs in bioethics, and thus united both disciplines, medicine and philosophy. AUB is the place where I fell in love for the first time, where I worked for the first time, and where I found myself for the first time. As I walk amidst its old picturesque buildings, I find myself smiling without knowing it, at times with joy, at others with melancholy. I smile mostly at the fact that perhaps I'm one of the few people who can hold the sand hourglass and turn it upside down at leisure, albeit figuratively, simply via a stroll on a campus that has marked history and was marked by history. AUB is a trip down memory lane. The earliest memory is that of my mother holding my hand when I was a child as we were pacing on AUB campus, somewhere between Marquand House and the mesmerizing sea. I still recall what she said to me that day. This is the university I dream you will graduate from, or from which you will graduate. She then showed me where she planted the jasmine tree near the bench in front of Jeffett Library. And ever since, that area became my favorite spot. Years passed by, and Mama knew about my plans of becoming a physician. And she used to take her silly teenager to the AUB MC coffee shop from time to time. Every time I go there, it's a trip again down memory lane. The trees can share stories from my life, so can the rocks between the sea and Marquand House, the green oval, the observatory where I launched a philosophy newsletter, the green bench between Nicely and West Hall where two juvenile adults dared to engrave their names, to mention but a few. The sick lemons recall when my advisor likened me to them, to the fury of my fiancé. The cafeteria when I used to have lunch every Wednesday during my first semester at AUB, as we had an afternoon statistic course with Dr. Maha Itani. Thank you for being here. My birthday surprise while a master's student in room 300 of the philosophy department, as one of the professors jokingly noted that I just turned 18. Perhaps because AUB has the power to make you feel you are always 18. AUB to me is a world encapsulating a big part of my existence. It is not just my alma mater, it is part of me. On campus, particularly the upper campus, I can anytime encounter the young Talia known for her avid love for books, spending a lot of her time at Jeffett Library with a fortunate access to the stacks. Being part of a family life at the Department of Philosophy with the morning coffee, manouches, and the laughter of Ilyas. I see imageries from the past mingled with the present. I come across some of my professors who played a role in making me what I am now. Some still teach, others retired, and to all I will be forever thankful. Special gratitude goes to my professor, advisor, mentor, colleague, and friend, Dr. Waddah Nasser. Sorry, Dr. Nasser, but I still can't call you on a first-name basis. مش هتظبط معي. Who supported me and again put up with me all through my years as student and then faculty. A role model who teaches by example. Thank you, Dr. Nabil Dajjani in absentia, my advisor and professor when an SBS major, and who made me once stay up all night preparing for my first oral presentation. I still recall it was on Tahir bin Jalloun. Because one sentence he said when I went to register for his course, I only accept excellent students. It is that first experience which led me to being able to make this address today. Thank you, Dr. Munir Bashur, my professor of education, whose fun and inspiring courses made me consider a teaching career. And here, allow me to recall an anecdote. My mom happened to know Dr. Bashur, and when she knew I was taking a course with him, she told me, Lama, when you finish and you get your final grade, go and say hello from me. So that's what I did. I went to his office. عم يضحك دكتور بشور. I went to his office. قلت له دكتور بشور بتسلم عليك دلال حديدي. He said, "Oof, تعرفيها لدلال?" قلت له, "Yes, I'm her daughter." And his reply was, "ليش تزوجت?" I told him, "What do you think?" So to my professors, I thank you. والعين ما بتعلى عن الحاجة. This is just a small appreciation. Thank you to all who are here, to my colleagues at AUBMC, and of course to my family for making a difference, which made the SHBPP earn the accreditation Star of Excellence long time ago. But AUB is also the place where I learned that matters are not always as they seem. That behind smiles, there might be plots. Behind claims of integrity, there might be treachery and duplicity. And behind hostility, a feebleness of will. Most importantly, it is while at AUB that I came to appreciate that behind every shade, there is a story, a life sculpted by pain and joy, both indubitable equalizing factors among all human beings. I saw this amidst my colleagues, my students, my patients, and my personal life. While at AUB, I studied Plato's Republic and Machiavelli's The Prince, as we challenged Thrasymachus's claim that the end justifies the means, and felt vindicated when Socrates proved that it pays to be just. But it is also while at AUB that I learned that oftentimes might is right. I learned that nowadays, more than ever before, it is the Machiavellis who rise in a world ruled by power, greed, and love of money. That power, political and not, as well as its impact on the lives of others, can only be comprehended through what I call an ecology of corruption. But it is while at AUB that I learned what a precarious rising that is before the final and inevitable subjugation. While at AUB, I learned to fight for what is right and to have moral courage regardless of repercussions. I learned to deal with moral distress and face moral myopia with stoicism when needed. It is while at AUB that I learned that the virtuous person can be virtuous, cannot be virtuous in part, and does what is right even when no one is looking, and that the bad person can harm the good person only if the latter lets him. While at AUB, I learned that there is no greater treasure than honesty and transparency, that trust is earned rather than acquired, and paradoxically also witnessed otherwise. While at AUB, I was nicknamed a steel magnolia, and while at AUB, I learned that nothing lasts forever except goodness of heart and deed. Perhaps that is why I teach my first clinical ethics session not in class, nor at the bedside, rather at the cemetery and by the tombside. What I'm trying to say today is that we are all, and to a great extent, the product of the choices we make in our lives, of the people whom we indirectly permit to impact our lives. Nothing happens ex nihilo, and we are all beings in time and beings in relation. And whether we are conscious of it or not, marked by the butterfly effect that molds our personal narratives. Towards a post-Flexnerian revolution, graduating the virtuous physician can be read at many levels. While it is addressed to physicians, it can also be read through different lenses. A virtuous person does the right thing even when no one is looking. In a world where the good perish and the evil flourish, I continue to be an incorrigible optimist and believe that it will eventually be otherwise. Oftentimes, my students inquire about the res specie phenum inscription that I have below my email signature. It stands for consider the end. I also carry the lesson on me every day through this ring, which reads, وَكَفَى بِالْمَوْتِ وَاعِظًا, inscribed on a replica of a sultan's ring. The ridiculously large turban is a burial shroud, a constant reminder of our evanescent nature. The sword is the pledge to fight for justice and what is right, be it by omission or commission. It is that consciousness of our ephemerality that teaches us how to touch immortality, and that is by leaving a good imprint, helping raise generations of virtuous people who will not only heal their patients, but also their homeland. Many of us continue to believe in what is right and in AUB, so that they may have life and have it more abundantly. Thank you.
So that, ختامها مسك, as they say. Thank you, Dr. Arawi, and congratulations again for this notable accomplishment. We, the SHBPP team, are the partners and collaborators, wish you all the continued success in your pioneering work, and we are proud to support you on your journey to make a difference. So this concludes our event for this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Arawi, and it was an immense pleasure, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.